Welcome back to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and the Republican presidential debate. We are getting questions tonight from Twitter. Governor Huntsman endorsed you today, but in New Hampshire, he called you a, quote, perfectly lubricated weather vane on the important issues of the day. And just last week, Governor Huntsman charged that it's hard to find your core, which leads to our first Twitter question. From @MissinDixie, quote, I want to support Mitt Romney, but considering his changing views, convince me you won't change again.
Wow. You know, the issue where I changed my mind, which obviously draws a lot of attention, was that when I was running for governor, I said I'd leave the law in place as it related to abortion. And I thought I could go on that narrow path between my personal belief and letting government stay out of the issue. And then a piece of legislation came to my desk, and it said that we would begin to create embryos for the purpose of destroying those embryos. And I said I simply couldn't sign something like that. And I penned an op-ed in the Boston Globe and said I'm pro-life, described my view, and served as a pro-life governor. The Massachusetts Citizens for Life have just written a letter this last week describing my record and saying this is a solid record of a very pro-life governor. I'm proud of that record. My view on other social issues such as gay marriage, I've always opposed gay marriage. I believe that we should provide equal rights to people regardless of their sexual orientation, but I do not believe that marriage should be between two people of the same gender. My care about getting in this race is about my belief in America and my concern that what we're seeing with this president is a change in course for America to become something we wouldn't recognize. I think he's drawing us into becoming more like a European social welfare state. I think he wants us to become an entitlement society where the people in this country feel they're all entitled to something from government and where government takes from some to give to others. I'm running to make sure that we don't transform America into something we don't recognize, but instead we restore the principles that made America the hope of the earth. I believe in free enterprise, I believe in freedom, I believe in liberty, I believe in an opportunity society, and everything I do will be designed to strengthen the values of this country, to strengthen the families of this country, to strengthen our economy, and to keep a military that is second to none in the world.
To my colleague, Juan Williams. Juan.
Governor Perry, last month the Department of Justice challenged South Carolina's new law requiring registered voters to show state-issued identification before they can vote. Governor Haley has pledged to fight the federal government all the way to the Supreme Court. You sided with the governor. Now, Governor Perry, are you suggesting on this Martin Luther King Jr. Day that the federal government has no business scrutinizing the voting laws of states where minorities were once denied the right to vote?
I'm saying that the state of Texas is under assault by federal government. I'm saying also that South Carolina is at war with this federal government and with this administration. When you look at what this Justice Department has done, not only have they taken them to task on voter ID, they've also taken them to task on their immigration law, and then the most egregious thing, obviously, is this National Labor Relations Board, where they come into a right-to-work state and tell the state of South Carolina, we're not going to let a private company come in here. That is irresponsible. I will suggest to you it's unconstitutional, and when I'm the President of the United States, the states are going to have substantially more rights to take care of their business and not be forced by the EPA or by the Justice Department, for that matter, to do things that are against the will of the people. Look, I've said that this administration is at war against organized religion, and when you look at what they've done, going after churches, because churches had that ministerial exception in there and could decide who they were going to hire at their churches. The idea that the Catholic charities cannot take money, or the federal government, this administration won't give them those dollars for sexually trafficked individuals because this administration doesn't agree with the Catholic Church on the issue of abortion. If that's not a war on religion, I don't know what it is, and this administration is out of control.
Senator Santorum. We talked about the high unemployment rate here in South Carolina, almost 10%, well above the national average. We've talked about the skyrocketing national debt. In December, Congress authorized an additional 20 weeks of jobless benefits. Benefits being paid by the federal government in many cases because states can't afford them. Do you support extending these benefits when they expire at the end of the month? Why or why not?
Well, I think we have to look at having a reasonable time for people to be able to come back, get a job, and then turn their lives around. But what we've seen in the past under this administration is extending benefits up to 99 weeks. I don't support that. I think if you have people who are out of work that long a period of time, it's without question makes it harder to find work when you come back. When you're that long away from a job, then you lose certain skills. You lose a lot of things when you're out of work, and there's a lot of research to show that to be the case. And so what I believe is, just like I did with welfare reform when we reformed welfare, we sent it back to the states, and we gave the states the flexibility to design these programs, just as I would do here with unemployment insurance. It should go back to the states, let the states design it. If South Carolina, because of a unique situation, wants to have a longer unemployment period of time because of a unique situation here, fine. But to have a federal program that roughly and crudely tries to assess the problem of unemployment from state to state and area to area is the wrong approach. What we should do is have it just like welfare. Give it to the states, put a time limit. In the case of welfare, it was 40 weeks. Give flexibility to the states to operate those programs. And even in unemployment, I mean, you can have, as we did on welfare, have some sort of either work requirement or job training required, and as a condition. We're not doing people any favors by keeping them on unemployment insurance for a long period of time.
Speaker Gingrich, Senator Santorum just mentioned it. The surge in unemployment has created these so-called 99ers, people who collect benefits for the maximum 99 weeks offered now. What is the maximum length anyone should be able to collect unemployment checks?
Well, you know, Brett, I think there's a better way to think about this. All unemployment compensation should be tied to a job training requirement. If somebody can't find a job, and they show up and they say, you know, I need help, the help we ought to give them is to get them connected to a business-run training program to acquire the skills to be employable. Now, the fact is, 99 weeks is an associate degree. It tells you, I think it tells you everything. I hope my four colleagues would agree here. It tells you everything you need to know about the difference between Barack Obama and the five of us, that we actually think work is good. We actually think saying to somebody, I'll help you if you're willing to help yourself is good. And we think unconditional efforts by the best food stamp president in American history to maximize dependency is terrible for the future of this country.
Kelly Evans.
Governor Romney, core European nations have just been downgraded, and several are only able to raise funds because of help from central banks. As president, you could immediately be faced with another financial crisis, perhaps this time sparked in Europe. This is not some imaginary event. How far would you be willing to go to keep the financial system functioning?
Well, of course we want to keep our financial system functioning, but we've learned some lessons from the experience of the last several years. What you don't want to do is to give the president or anyone else a blank check or a slush fund to take care of their friends or take care of industries or companies they think they want to save. What we have to do... What we have to do is to recognize that bankruptcy can be a process, reorganization for banks as well as other institutions that allow them to get rid of their excess costs, to reestablish a sound foundation, and to emerge stronger. We're seeing that as a result of the bankruptcy in the auto industry. We could see that in our banking sector as well, if a bank or two get in trouble. And so the right course for us is not to think we have to go run over to Europe to try and save their banking system or to try and pump money into the banks here in this country. This is time for us to recognize that the system of laws we have and the free enterprise system works. and we don't need government stepping in with regulations and higher taxes and telling us what we can and cannot do as a society to try and keep America strong. The best way to get America's economy going is not to think about how much we can push government into the American economy, but instead how much we can get government out of the American economy. And our tax rates are too high on individuals as well as on our employers. Our regulations are too burdensome. Regulators see themselves as the opponents of free enterprise as opposed to those that encourage it. We have an energy policy that doesn't take advantage of our natural resources. That makes no sense. We need our oil, our coal, our gas, our nuclear. And finally, we need to open up new markets. This president has opened up no new markets for American goods around the world in his 3 years, even as European nations and China have opened up 44. We have to have a policy to open markets, put Americans to work. That's the answer, not bailouts.
Jerry Saab has the next question.
Congressman Paul, South Carolina has 7 major military bases and thousands of people employed in the defense industry. But you want to make major cuts in defense spending, several $100 billion in the coming years, that inevitably would cost South Carolina jobs. What do you say to people in this state who worry that your military plans would hurt the national security and cost South Carolina jobs?
I would say your question suggests you're very confused about my position. I want to cut money, overseas money. That's what I want to do. I want to cut military money. I don't want to cut defense money. I want to bring the troops home. I'd probably have more bases here at home. We were closing them down in the 1990s and building them overseas. That's how we got into trouble. So we would save a lot more money and have a stronger national defense, and that's what we should do. But to say that we would be weaker is absolutely wrong, because and another important thing you should consider is the fact that the military is behind me more than the others. I get twice as much money from the active military duties than all the other candidates put together. So they're saying that I'm on the right track. They're sick and tired of those wars. They're sick and tired of the nation building and the policing activity. But to say that we would have less money for defense, we actually have more money. And if I may, I'd like to go back to the international financial thing.
So, Congressman, just to be clear, your plan calls for freezing defense spending at 2006 levels, which is well below where we are today.
You still don't understand.
What's he missing, Congressman?
You don't understand there's a difference between military spending and defense spending. Just because you spend $1 billion on an embassy in Baghdad, bigger than the Vatican, you consider that defense spending. I consider that waste. So now, if you want to... A little while ago, we were talking about, funding the unemployed. Of course, that should be privatized, and I don't support it. But I don't support cutting that off like that. I'd cut some of this military spending, like Eisenhower advised us. Watch out for the military-industrial complex. Defend this country. We have to have a strong national defense, but we don't get strength by diluting ourselves in 900 bases, 130 countries. That is where the problem is. But you need to understand that there's a difference between just military spending and defense spending. Just to spend money. We understand this domestically. If you spend more money domestically, we know it's wrong, but we're supposed to spend more money, and that's conservative. I've never quite understood this. We're supposed to be conservative, spend less money.
I'd like to ask a question about keeping money for all of the candidates down the line. What is the highest federal income tax any American should have to pay?